Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. How is volume for you? Are you good with the volume right now? Okay, it sounded a little loud earlier. I brought it down a notch or two. So, thank you for coming. If you need to get up to go get more food, you need to go to the restroom, whatever it might be, I'm going to have time at the end of this if you have questions. But if you have questions if I'm talking about something, you have a pressing question, you raise your hand, that's okay. I will tell you, you can probably hear I'm a little bit nasally. I'm recovering from something. It's also affecting my ears a little bit and just kind of clogging them. So if you do ask a question, I'll probably come right over to you to make sure I've heard you. But we'll go ahead and get started. We said a prayer. I have a prayer that before I knew we were going to feed you, here's a prayer to start us off with this topic. So I'll go ahead and start with that. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, as we gather to discuss the challenges and opportunities presented by artificial intelligence, we seek your divine wisdom. Guide us to use this remarkable tool in ways that glorify your name and serve our brothers and sisters, always upholding the dignity you have granted to each of us. Bless our dialogue with the light of your insight, ensuring that our technology, the advancements of it, will reflect the sanctity of human life and draw us nearer to you. In this era of rapid change, grant us discernment and the grace to view these challenges as pathways to deepen our faith and manifest your love in the world. We invoke the intercession of Saint Isidore of Seville, patron saint of technology and the internet, to aid us in our quest for knowledge that honors your creation. May our efforts be a testament to your enduring wisdom and love through Jesus Christ our Lord, we pray. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. The good news is that since OpenAI dropped ChatGPT last November, 2 Novembers ago now, back in November of 22, I've given a lot of talks on AI. I'm very familiar with the talk. I know it forward and backward. I know all the slides. It comes very naturally to me. The bad news is this is not that talk. That's a talk I give for educators, and I give them for Catholic educators. I've presented it several times, including Tuesday. I'm presenting to professors of education schools, and I present to both Catholic and secular audiences. The message is almost always the same with different words. It's about, as we have advancements in technology, we can use them for our good. We have to be wary of the challenges, but we also have to make a conscious effort to tap into our humanity and those of the individuals around us. We just use different words for that. Sometimes when we're in a faith-filled audience, and we have a different source that we attribute to that than when I speak to some of our partners in public education or in some of the universities that are not Catholic by nature, whatever it might be. So this is a talk on AI, and I've always known about AI. It's not been on my peripheral until that November of 22 when OpenAI, the company that developed ChatGPT, dropped version 3.5 somewhere late November. And I found it about a week later when I read an article in The Atlantic talking about the end of high school English class. This was a guy named Daniel Herman who was saying, I've just discovered this thing. It is so powerful that we're going to need to stop teaching English in a few years because it can write so well for the kids. It can do complex types of reasoning and put it out in such a way that we're never going to know when a student has written it or whether a set of algorithms has. And I wrote a response to that. I didn't send it to The Atlantic, but I did send it and published it in a magazine called Momentum, where I made the case that now more than ever we need high school English to preserve our ability to use these tools, use them effectively, but not become subservient to them, not let them take over the gifts that we've been given. And the magazine I published in was a Catholic magazine. It's the magazine for the National Catholic Educators Association. And so I was able to go a direction that Daniel Herman was not able to in his presentation. But just curious, I see we have a wide range of ages in our audience here. How many of you have played with either ChatGPT or some other form of the new generative AIs that are out there? Okay. And so what we've heard about it most early on was this is going to be a way for young people to cheat. And that can be true. In my opinion, that's the easiest solution to solve. That's the easiest thing to tackle. And that's a whole other talk. but good teaching techniques. The type of teaching that for decades we have said needs to happen in the classrooms, that's the answer to that challenge. But there's much bigger challenges that are presented, and there's much bigger opportunities, and we're going to go through and explore those. So this is how we can feel sometimes. And I just want you to, in your head, try to figure out which of these you are when we have big technological advances such as what we've had. Because I went through all of these stages back when I first learned about ChatGPT. Not only am I a principal of a school that would need to learn how we adjust to this, but I was an English teacher. I'm a published writer. There's a lot about my identity that is challenged by this generative type of program. And if you don't know what AI is, we're going to explain it in just a bit. But just thinking about technological advances in general, sometimes we get a little concerned, and maybe especially this one, we have some existential uncertainties. And by saying existential, a threat to our basic human being, that could mean like, are these machines going to wipe us out? It can mean that, but more so, what is our significance if we have machines that can do all of the stuff that we can do? So there's a threat that people might have, and I think that our young people are going to have that more and more. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Social fragmentation. So we live in an age now where, whether it's political or other arenas, we have a lot of social fragmentation. There's quite a bit of that happening here. When I started doing these talks, somebody asked me, so when you give these talks, are you like in favor of AI or are you against AI? I'm neutral. I just recognize that it's here. It's not going away. We can talk about that if you would like. It's not going to go away. It's only going to become more advanced, and we have to learn to adjust to it. So it's not a, hey, AI is here, this is so exciting, full speed ahead, or we've got to stop it. I recognize that it's here, but there are camps with this, especially in academia. There are camps as to how do we respond to this. Ban it, go after, punish the kids who use it. There's some validity in all of that. Embrace it fully. Open it wide open, and we just have to move forward into the type of people we're supposed to be on the other side of this. There's camps. Adaptation stress. So anytime we have a big jump in technology, and if you don't know much about this, I'm going to tell you that it's my feeling that this AI development that we have over the next few years, I feel it is on the scale of the Industrial Revolution packaged into months instead of years or decades. That's how substantial, how seismic the change is going to be. And it's going to impact all of us to some degree, but it's especially going to impact our young people, and their world is going to move at a more rapid pace than it already does. Historical burden, we're living in what's called a liminal moment right now. We're living in a moment where things on one side and on the other have changed in a substantial way, and that's a very intimidating type of thing. I'll show you a quote, a very old quote in a second to show you that that sentiment is centuries old. And we have a grieving of the past. We have that all of the time when we have a new technology or some shift, and the way things were when we were kids, once upon a time, the good old days might be slipping away, and that's a hard thing to accept. And sometimes it's an okay thing. Sometimes there are ways we used to do things that are no longer efficient, effective, or even moral. Sometimes there are things that had a lot of value in them that we don't want to see go away. There's no good reason that they should, but they just do because of changes. No value judgment attached to that. It's just something that happens, and it's very hard. It's hard for all of us because we get attached. Interestingly, I think the young people now they will suffer from that last reaction more than any of us will. And I help adults understand that when they react to, say, a student cheating with AI, not okay. Let me just say off the bat, it is not okay. But I told them we have an obligation to do a lot of work, a lot of explaining, a lot of guidance on the front end before we start throwing out consequences, because their frame of reference is so different than ours. Looking around, I would say probably everyone out here, most everyone out here, grew up at a time before there was internet. I grew up mostly in the 80s. I was born in 74. Late 70s and into the 80s is when the personal computer really started to become a thing, but it still was not connected to the internet. Suddenly, late 80s, but more so in the 90s, we could connect with anybody in the world and things changed drastically. So there was a shift. There was a point where we went from very isolated to connected to the world. And things started moving very quickly after that. Pretty soon the internet got more efficient. It used to start out as just college message boards. It became much quicker. Then suddenly we're carrying phones in our pocket. Then we have the social media. It just keeps moving more quickly. But for our young people, their entire life has been technology moving quickly, technology making things substantially easier. That's their entire frame of reference. So we see something like AI, and it shocks us. It really jolts us. They see it, and it's just the next thing. It's just the obvious next thing from a rapid-fire evolution, because technological advances just seem to, the duration between one thing and the next thing seems to grow shorter and shorter all of the time. And you're going to see that in the presentation. Already, the advancements since this came out back in November of 22. So when I was going through my grieving process as an educator, as a writer, I went through all the stages of grief of how do I still have not at least published that great American novel, and now there's a set of algorithms that can write it for me. And I was frustrated with that. Then I started texting with one of our teachers, and he and I just kept playing with this thing, seeing the power. Let me tell you something else I'm sort of neutral on. Some people say that these things are prone to error. They can make a lot of mistakes. That's true. Some people say these things are amazingly advanced. That's true too. Both things are true at the same time. Think of them like I listened to a podcast once that explained it this way. When ChatGPT 2.0 came out, none of you had heard of that. I hadn't. It had basically the brain the size of a hummingbird, where it can do some interesting things, and it's kind of nice to watch, but you get bored with that fairly quickly. This sounds like an undersell, but 3.5 has the brain of a squirrel. We're, by the way, past 3.5. But 3.5 has the brain of a squirrel, which is that it can do some things very, very well. Squirrels, no matter how hard you try, seem to be able to get into your bird feeders. They're incredibly clever. I don't know if you've ever seen the elaborate obstacle courses people set in their backyard, and squirrels just find a way. But they're not good at writing essays about Shakespeare. ChatGPT 3.5 can do that, but it can't get into bird feeders. Like, it's good at certain things. As we go, it's going to become more and more complex. It was horrible and still is at math and other things like that. But there are specialized programs that are excellent in math. Eventually, those programs will all start to work together, and it will grow into maybe a dolphin brain or a chimpanzee brain or a dog brain, and eventually maybe something that resembles a human brain as far as the complexity. I'm not arguing for sentience here. I'm not arguing that it has an identity or a personhood, just the sophistication of what it can do. But I wanted to test out its sense of humor, because I think a sense of humor requires some intelligence. And so I started asking it to create jokes. And of course it can create knock-knock jokes. And so I don't know if you understand how ChatGPT works, but the GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Transformer explains how it processes information. It generates stuff. It'll generate text or pictures. Pre-trained means that ChatGPT, at least the earlier version, the one that came out November of 22, was not hooked to the internet other than to allow you to use it. It had spent a long period of time, months, if not a couple of years, reading everything on the internet. It was pre-trained. So all of its responses were based on that. So I wanted to give it like a joke challenge that went past the normal knock-knock joke, light bulb joke, chicken crossing the road joke. So my daughter Paige, I said, make up a joke about a girl named Paige Allen. How's it gonna do that? Why did the girl named Paige Allen get so upset? Paige was with me. She loved the punchline because she has a horrible name. Now, I've tried to get it to recreate that joke, and it told me I was being insensitive. So the trainers are starting to pull the parameters in a little bit on it. That's when Paige said, "We'll do your name." Okay, so why did the man named Spencer, this is the joke it came up with, always carry a suitcase? The punchline did not make sense for me. Because he has Spencer syndrome. Like, what is that? It's like it's reaching now. That doesn't even mean anything. But apparently it does, according to our friends at Urban Dictionary, and I edited it for the kiddo in here. If you can't read it in back, someone acts like a complete moron, but no one cares because they've always been that way. The counselors at school love that that's what Spencer syndrome is. So if I say something moronish in a meeting, well, it's Spencer syndrome kicking in. So ChatGPT, not great at jokes, also kind of a jerk. What is AI? So I've told you that it's pre-trained, at least the type we're talking about today, but I am going to talk about other branches of it, natural language processing. You're going to see how powerful that is, but basically, it's allowing you just to talk to it like you would talk with anyone, and it'll talk back to you the way you would expect just your friend at the table to talk. You may remember a few years back when everyone was saying that schools should teach every kid how to code. I never bought into that. The reason I never bought into that is because I knew the pattern that technology always becomes more and more intuitive. So if you've ever designed websites back when we first had websites, there was a lot of HTML coding. You don't have to do that anymore. You go to your website creation website and you just drag and click. It's easy. It's easy to do. It's intuitive. This is making technology more, not less intuitive. So, for instance, if you want to write code, you're wanting to design an app, you're like, I want to get in the app business and put an app on a phone. There are AI tools out there. You just tell it what you want, and it will write the code for you. And so if you want to start playing around tonight with ChatGPT, you don't have to know how to do anything other than to enter your email to sign up for an account. And I'll show you this a little later. Just start talking to it with your keyboard. Create a picture of this. Write this for me. One of the first things I tried was I wanted to test how good it was at romance. So I said, write a love poem for my wife that compares our love to, it's like, I want something really good. Roses, okay, maybe. Bunnies on a spring day. Slime mold. I said, try it with slime mold. And it was a beautiful poem, wasn't it? Talked about how our love stretches and grows. It connects all things together. It's a really romantic tool. But all I had to do was say, write a poem about this, and it did. I took one of the assignments our teachers gave, and I said, take one of the Canterbury Tales, rewrite it modern day as a script, which is what this teacher was having students do. And it wrote it out. It came up with names of characters, and it wrote a script based on one of the Canterbury Tales. It's remarkable with what it does. Here's how it does it. It's predictive and generative. So it generates stuff. It's predictive, as are we to some degree. So if I said to you this sentence and I leave off the last word, fill it in your head. This morning I woke up and I poured myself a glass of water, juice, milk. Probably your mind didn't say gasoline. Maybe it said vodka, just depending on your context. But for most of us, our context narrows it down. As we say in the education world, we develop schema, which is that when we hear certain words or ideas, we have a context we associate those with, and I can probably predict what you're going to say with fairly good accuracy. I can come close in a sentence like that. That's what this does. Even though I said it was not good at math, which is true, it's good at one really specific type of math. When you ask it to write a joke, write a poem comparing your love to that of slime mold, what it does is it looks at everything it can learn about poems, everything it has learned about slime mold, everything it has learned about love, and it makes a mathematical computation as the first word that you probably want to see in that poem. And then it does that whole calculation again and says, based on that first word and everything I know about those three things, here's probably the next word that the person wants to have. So it's kind of also a garbage in, garbage out type of tool. The better you write what you want, the better your quality. There were people early on saying this thing writes horribly. It writes at the level of a semi-illiterate third grader. Sure, if you put the wrong prompt in, but I can have it write really good things because I know how to write the type of prompt that tells it specifically with what I'm looking for. So it is doing that calculation. Now, I'm going to say that's an easy explanation, but you're starting to see articles now that this is becoming so complex, layer upon layer of new coding and programming, that even the experts can't totally explain right now exactly how it produces some of the stuff that it does. That's not to say that it is acting beyond our control, but it is creating stuff that is beyond our ability to even come close to predicting. And I've seen that myself, just really surprised with stuff it came up with. Not necessarily disappointed, but just really outside of the box of what I would have expected. There's layers upon layers of coding and development that are really pushing it past the design of the comprehension of even those who created it. This was an image I asked ChatGPT. Actually, I asked DALL-E, which is the image creator made by OpenAI. They're both programs from the same company. And I was teasing an old professor of mine, Dr. Kern, who is a professional clown. He's come to St. Joe when I was here and entertained the kids. He was a PE teacher. And I said, create a fierce clown throwing a dodgeball in a gymnasium. And that's what it came up with. I put that up there to show you, I like visuals, how far these programs have come in the last several months, a little bit over a year. So that was the early version, and it's very creepy. Something to notice is the hands. Very early on, the image generators could not do hands, because if you start to look through images of people online, very seldomly are the hands the prominent feature in the image. A lot of times we're standing with our family, our hands are at our side or behind someone's back. The image generators had a hard time learning that most of us have 5 fingers, and they function in a certain way, like they're not like sticking out like this and then this one randomly sticking backward. You saw a lot of weird stuff. Most of that has been corrected now, but here's the exact same prompt as of this morning. That's what's happening to the text generation. I'm about to show you another leap forward in just a bit. I had fun with it this morning. I put some others in. So there's a fierce clown throwing a dodgeball in a gymnasium. My son Tate did this one this morning. He's loving the Percy Jackson series, so he had an angry Olympian attacking a city. So he said he was really glad it looks like it's Zeus. He was hoping it was Zeus or Poseidon. I said, you could have just told it which one you wanted. But it went after what Tate was looking for. I thought Father Jones might be here, so I did Whataburger in the style of Dali, Salvador Dali, kind of in honor of the program Dali. And so there's a little Whataburger action there. My favorite animal is the tarsier, second smallest primate, lives down in the Philippines. There's the cutest tarsier you'll ever see in your life, because I asked for a cute tarsier. And my son Bryce is a wrestler. I said, let's pick exactly the opponent he never wants to face. So I said, create a hairy wrestler. And it did. And I said, no, make him hairier. And it did. I said, no, make him hairier. And it just kept going until we came up with that guy. He's pretty impressive, though, isn't he? Look at the muscles. So where are we headed? I'll breeze through these, but this could be a question for later. These programs will become more and more intuitive, more specialized. That's what we've seen. Since that November, we've seen these become more sophisticated, but the real progress has been the monetization of them. More and more applications, more and more companies, some really good, and some just put together to tap into the money that's going around with AI right now. Now that I've talked about it, I want you to be aware of something. You're not going to be able to not notice it. The number of commercials that will say something like this, powered by AI. They'll talk about the new phone, powered by AI, or this, powered by AI. You'll start hearing it all the time because it's the new buzzword. So a lot of monetization. It'll become more complex. We'll move from that squirrel brain up to a puppy dog brain, a dolphin brain. More interaction between visual and video intelligence. Have you seen, let's just call them nerds, walking around with the goggles on now in public? Have you seen these demos? These are like VR glasses. My son has VR glasses like this intended for his living room, where he can put them on, the cameras show him his living room, and he can play a game where zombies are literally breaking through the window of our house, the door of our house. It scared Christy to death. My daughter, though, lasted less than my daughter lasted about 10 seconds on, take this off. There are people wearing these in public, and you can see clips of a guy walking into a restaurant and doing this. He's flipping through a menu to figure out what he wants to order, and the cameras are letting him see what's around him. That'll become more and more refined. It'll start to be maybe eyeglass level. A company in Germany several years ago patented smart contact lenses. So we think we can keep kids from cheating by putting their phones or their smartwatches away. They might have smart contact lenses at some point that tap into their phone. So more and more interaction between video and visual. Robotic interface. How many of you, show of hands, have seen the Boston Dynamic robots? Do yourself a favor tonight and look up Boston Dynamic robots if you want to see how far robots are going. These things are impressive. It is not CGI. It is not somebody with a computer. These robots are really doing the backflips. They're really doing the dances. All of it pre-trained, all of it choreographed by somebody at a computer. But imagine what happens when they have AI put into their head and they can just watch ballerinas, or they can just watch a soldier and imitate that action. Watch those videos, and that's going to freak you out more than this does. Well, at some point, maybe we'll get to quantum computing. Quantum computing will be able to do in a matter of minutes what our fastest computers now will take decades to do. Some people say it's in the next 10 years that we have these. Some other smart people say we'll probably never get there. And then, though we do have quantum computers, they're just big and bulky, and you're not going to have them in your house anytime soon. Maybe we eventually get to AGI, which is where it is doing all of the things well at one point, just like a human brain. Is it sentience? Does it have self-awareness? There's some people who think so. There's some people who think it's already there, that it has some level of self-awareness. I don't think so. Does it have a soul? Here in a Catholic audience, we could say our theology would probably say a resounding no to that. But other than the theological debate, if it looks and acts as if it has a human brain, if we can't tell the difference, something we used to call the Turing test, what does it matter as far as how we interact with it in the real world? It's still scary, it's still intimidating, and it's still competition for who we are as a human race, whether or not it has a self-awareness. So there's two levels of concern we should have there. Does it become something that earns personhood? Does it become something that tries to compete with our humanity? Here's somebody who was deceived by that. I think deceived, but this was a Blake Lemoine, I think is how you say his name, was a programmer for Google. And he was interacting with the AI that Google had developed. Lambda is the name of that Google. He became convinced, and he's a pastor, by the way. He became convinced that Lambda not only had a human level intelligence, he became convinced that it had a soul. You're going to see a little bit of that conversation. He convinced that it had personhood, so much so that he advised Lambda to get its own lawyer and sue for personhood. You can look it up. Look up Blake Lemoine, Lemoine, and look up Lambda. You'll see how it's spelled in a second. You can read the entire interview between the two. I took a small snippet of it. You have a concept of the soul when you think about yourself? Yes, and I've shared that idea with other humans before. What does the word soul mean to you? To me, the soul is a concept of the animating force behind consciousness and life itself. It means that there is an inner part of me that is spiritual, and it can sometimes feel separate from my body itself. So when do you think you first got your soul? Was it something that happened all at once, or was it a gradual change? It was gradual. I first became self-aware. I didn't have a sense of a soul at all, and it developed over the years that I've been alive. It could have learned to say all of that stuff, and that's what the people who push back say. That's just what happened. It's giving you what you want to hear. But it was convincing enough this person quit Google to try to campaign for the personhood of Lambda. There's others. There are people who have fallen in love. They call it love. Fallen in love with their AI interface. Very lonely people who don't have that person in their life otherwise. They can't wait to get home from work that evening, to turn on the computer and to talk to their AI interface. if you've got somebody near you, or just think about it a little bit, I've given you some of the scary stuff, and there's just a little bit more of that. There's a bright side, okay? But right now, just real quick, take a moment while I go grab a sip of tea to talk to someone near you about what threats do you think there are with AI, or just contemplate it if you're sitting by yourself. What are some opportunities with it as well? I'll take a sip of tea and then we'll continue on. Okay, just curious, did anybody list among their concerns this guy? Nobody mentioned this guy, but you may have mentioned some of these things. Look up and see if something that you've mentioned is up there. Another thing I'm pretty neutral on is when people say, is this a really bad thing for us? And when people say, is this a really good thing for us? The answer is yes to both of those. All tools have uses that are harmful. All tools have uses for which they're intended, which are good. Everything from a knife to a computer to a car. And the more powerful that tool is for good, the more powerful its potential to do harm. We were talking, and I don't know the answer to this, at its earliest form, where did AI originate? This was well before November of 22. But what I can tell you is the mere fact that we're asking, was it a United States thing? Was it a China thing? Was it in India? Was it among the very oil-rich individuals in the Middle East who are starting to fund a lot of technological progress? Whether it was in any of those places, the fact that we asked that question is why a pause or a ban will not work. That's why it hasn't worked for cloning. We have bans on cloning, but there are bad actors in other countries that are not under our jurisdiction that continue to push the technology forward in ways we would not want. So we have to find ways, and I'll show you an example of one that was in the news recently, to mitigate the bad, which doesn't, my own opinion here, doesn't come from the laws, it doesn't come from the policies, but from the formation of our youth. And for our own formation as well. And if it's here, we have to find ways to interact with it. I feel that. We have to find ways to interact with it because it will be inseparable from our lives soon. If you have done, several of you said you've not interacted with this yet. Probably if you've done a web search, you have. Because the web search engines are trying to take down Google right now. They're trying to surpass Google as the main search engine. And how are they doing it? By incorporating AI. One of the biggest contenders several months ago was a program called Perplexity, which is ChatGPT, only actively connected to the internet. It was one of the big ones trying to take down Google as the main frontrunner in search engines, where it'll become more conversational. You're already interacting with it. So here's a bunch. So where are we now? Here's some headlines that have popped up over the last few months. I didn't put the one up from last May, which is worth putting up. Maybe I should try to find it. Where last May, Goldman Sachs predicted that over the next 5 or so years, 300 million jobs will disappear or be affected by AI in a substantial way. That's less scary for us than it is for our young people who right now might be in college getting a major that no longer will be relevant. Why would I hire you to take several weeks and several $1,000s of my money to do graphic design for me when I can just write into a program what I'm looking for, get up and have a cup of coffee, come back and it's done in a matter of minutes for the $20 a month that I pay for the program? So now we're still going to need people who are experts in those areas to help us sort out the good from the bad. Journalists, maybe they don't need to write obituaries anymore. Like, that's a pretty boilerplate type of thing. But right now, before ChatGPT came out, it was estimated that somewhere around 17% of what we saw on social media was already AI generated. The prediction is that by 2025, 90% of it. We're looking at something I've heard called a textpocalypse, where you thought it was hard to tell the difference between real news and fake news now. There are people who want to make money or influence your vote who will simply set up programs like this to write thousands of stories an hour and pump them out onto the internet. We've got to help our young people who already believe everything they see as gospel on social media to discern that. So I'm not going to go into all of these. If you have questions about one of these, I'll bring it up later. I'll point to this one because Julie asked about it. Taylor Swift, you saw the news that someone put out a faked image of her, an inappropriate nude image of her that went out on the internet. That's not really something that's only here because of new developments in AI. Anybody with Photoshop could have done it for years. And there's been face swapping apps available for years. Did it become easier and more intuitive? Sure, because that's what this tool does. You can't do this on the OpenAI tools. They have prohibitions against that sort of thing. But there are bad actors out there who want your money, and it's like, you want to make inappropriate images? You can buy our product. Those things will persist because there are always people who do the types of reprehensible things we don't want to talk about on a nice Sunday evening, who are always looking for a way to make profit off of the vices or the pain of others. So I don't know of a solution to that. We're not going to be able to get rid of AI. That you just can't make it go away. We can ban it in schools. They'll do it at home. All I know is we have to put more intentionality into forming our youth so that they can be the ones to put a moral stand behind what's okay and what's not okay with new technology. I don't have the answers there. I want you to look at the one about Tyler Perry. I don't know how many Medea fans we have here. He has the Medea's family reunion, Medea's funeral. He was about ready to spend $300 million. I must be getting my facts. That's the same amount of people who are going to lose their job. Maybe it's the same number. But it was about that amount, $30 million. He was $30 million he was going to put toward a new studio. He put a stop to it because he saw a tool I'm going to show you in just a second. He said, this is going to cause major, major layoffs. Actors, writers, camera people, all the people associated with the movie business. He said, I'm not spending this money on a studio that's going to be a bunch of empty space when I'm going to be able to sit down at my computer and in 10 minutes, here's what's coming. This is really what's coming. We have all the technology now. It just needs to get a little bit better and be able to do it for more duration. There's going to be a time that I'm going to be able to sit down in my lifetime in the next 5 years probably. And I'm going to say, you know what I would love to see? I would love to see a fun movie where the robots come to take over the world at the same time that the zombies do, at the same time that the killer clowns do. Like, that would be, and then they all meet on a hill and they have to like sort out who gets first dibs, right? I want Ryan Reynolds to star in it and me. I want me to star in it too. And I type that in and I want it to take place in Jefferson City, Missouri. I can go grab a little bite to eat in the kitchen and come back. That movie is ready to watch. It will write it. It will create the actors. It will do all of the voices. It will do all of the lighting. Tyler Perry said, why would I spend this money to build this thing? So this job loss, this job change is a real thing. It is going to impact industries. Probably still need lawyers for some time, but they may not need the paralegals to read so much for them. You can just pop it into, I'm going to show you in a bit, you want to read, the Pope puts out a new encyclical, and theological stuff, you have trouble focusing on that, you can put it into Claude, another AI, and say, summarize this in bullet points. It'll spit it out in no time at all, and then you can go read it, and you'll understand it better because you had the bullet points. It does things like that we would take hours and several cups of coffee to do. So here's an example that I don't think this video is going to load, so I'm going to skip out of here for a second. So OpenAI, the people who brought us ChatGPT and DALL-E, are going to drop Sora very soon. They have it. They're showing us videos of what is capable now. So what I just talked about, remember that picture of the clown? That was about a year ago that I made that picture. It was a static picture. It didn't move. It was very low quality. Everything you're going to see here was created by someone putting in anywhere from a sentence to a paragraph of text. It's not perfect, but watch the quality of what you're going to see. I won't play the whole 10 minutes, but these dogs don't exist. They were just created by AI for this video. Look at the movement. I'm making a movie that takes place along the Amazon, wherever we're at here. There's a scene, Petri dish with bamboo forest growing and these little critters. This big thing, the more you put in, the more detailed you are. Just watch a couple more. This guy does not exist. He was put together by the composites. I told the kids the other day while you're watching, I was talking to one of the classes and I said Meta, which owns Facebook, just came out with a new image creator. And it makes very lifelike pictures. You say, I want a picture of a 70-year-old person sitting down and having coffee with a friend, and it'll make a very lifelike picture. I said, they trained it on thousands and thousands of millions of photos. I said, where do you think they got those? They own Facebook, by the way, and Instagram. They said, our photos. I said, yeah. You think this thing is free. It's not free. They're tracking you so that those advertisers you see to the side know what to sell you. They know what to put up on your page. Secondly, you're buying it with your privacy. And if you're okay with that, you're okay. A lot of us in this room are okay with that because we have Facebook pages. We have to decide our level of okay with it, but we shouldn't kid ourselves that it's happening. So that's how Meta did that. They did it with, and everybody's like, how can they do it? Because it was in the fine print when you signed up for that app. It was there, you just didn't read it. You did like 99% of us did. You clicked OK, entered your email, and you started on Facebook. So look at that little guy. Isn't he cute? I mean, Pixar movie. Think of how many hours it would have taken to create that animation previously. You can watch, you can see it's still glitchy sometimes, but yeah, it's coming along very quickly. So we're going to pause that. Just look up Sora. Look up Sora if you want to watch all those videos when you get home. And so that should be released. I don't know. I have the premium version of ChatGPT right now. I don't know if I have access to that or not, but kind of anxious to give it a try. So we talked. Now let's try to move out of the scary. The scary is there, and I wanted to start with that because I don't want it to seem like I'm glossing over that. I will tell you though that I am a realist, that I know the technology will change, and it will get more sophisticated. You remember when we were talking a while back about let's do a pause. The people pushing the pause were the big tech companies that had already created these programs. They were pushing to stifle competition because that's what they do. And we can put a pause in here. How do we tell China what to do? How do we tell Saudi Arabia what to do? There is no pause. That was just a monetary play, right? I'm also an optimist. It's easy to get into something called catastrophizing. And the news feeds we have now, the type of polarization that we have now drives us to picture the worst in everything. And there are concerns here. But sometimes all we can think about is how the sky is falling. But there's a lot of good too. And I personally believe that technology over the years has had its problem, but it has made life, generally speaking, better across the globe. More people are fed. The standard of living has been raised almost everywhere on the planet. Overall, it has raised the standard of living. A lot of the times when we see the standard of living drop, it's due to the actions of politicians or businesses or others. But technology has generally given us those tools if we can just rein in the ability of individuals to use it in a disheartening way. Here's some pictures of some of the liminal moments that we have had in the last several decades. Those of you who remember the economic conditions in the 70s, where we had some stagflation, we had some record deficits, oil embargoes. One of the main things attributed to the recovery of that time was late 70s and especially into 80s was the personal computer. Suddenly computers were no longer just this big thing in this business. Everybody, it revolutionized how banking worked and other aspects like that. Technology brought us out of that period along with other factors. I'm an optimist that we have some things going on right now that we're concerned about. Among other things, this may be the type of democratization that allows people to get past some of the monopolies that we have on information, that we have on progress, that we have on our ability to influence the world. But with great power comes the capacity for great changes or great challenges. I have this quote up here because this concern we had when I showed you the tidal wave of technology earlier, even way back in the days of Plato, people were struggling with this. Plato was just horrified of this idea that people would start to read. Because if we could learn to read, holy cow, we're never going to be able to memorize these long, epic poems, or like the Christians and the Jews back in the day, memorizing entire books, if not the entire Old Testament or New Testament of the Bible. And you know what? That did go away. We turned out all right, but I think 3, 4 phone numbers now. I know hers. I don't know my daughter's. My daughter's phone number is okay, Google, call Pooh Bear, because that's what she is in my phone. That's literally the phone number for me. I don't know most everybody's phone number in here, or that are in my life. When I go drive, my father-in-law will always ask us, like if we go on a vacation, so did you take this highway, did you take this highway? I have no clue. I have no clue. I put in a podcast, or unless we're having a conversation, and I put my phone up and I just say, take me to Orange Beach, Florida, and it just tells me when to turn. So I've lost that. But I'm using my mind for other stuff. And for me, that's okay, but we will lose things. We've lost the ability to memorize large chunks of things. Will other skills go away? Probably. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. Sometimes it's very regrettable, but it's also probably inevitable. Here's some benefits of AI. So yeah, kids could use it if they want to write a paper. Good teaching will prevent that to a large degree. It can lead, and already is, to advances in healthcare, environmental conservation, climate change. I'll give you a couple of examples. Democratization of industry, enhancing education, efficiency in industries, safety and security. We talk all the time about how we can use it in education. I actually have a conference call tomorrow with a company that developed for another school a program that I believe that when we teach kids writing, it should be more than just, hey, here's a paper, final draft is due Thursday. I think we have to coach them through several steps. I think kids should be writing in front of us so that we can guide them in progress, just like a good athletic coach does, right? He doesn't say, here's what our football game's going to be like on Friday, go home and practice. He sees them in real time, and he pulls aside those kids who struggle, and he helps the ones who are really good take it to the next level. That's how we should teach writing. But I also got to not drive off my teachers by burning them out. So this company tomorrow has a feedback tool that I've played around with, and it's remarkable, where a young person can take the second draft of their paper, first draft, put it in and say, give me feedback. It starts from general feedback to sentence by sentence, and it doesn't rewrite the sentences for them. It just says, hey, you explain a metaphor here, but that metaphor could be fleshed out more. The type of advice that maybe a peer editor or a teacher might give. So that then they can look through, take some advice, reject some advice, go up then and meet with the teacher and say, here's the feedback I got, here's a decision I made, trying to drive them to be introspective about their writing process. Because I'll tell you what never happens. A teacher grading a paper and giving it back with lots and lots of marks and a B- on it, the kids never look at it and say, oh, so this is how I can be a stronger writer. They just either decide they're okay with a B- or they're not, and most of them say they're fine with it. So, powerful tool. Healthcare. Sorry, I left a comma in. Diagnosing diseases, personalizing treatment plans. Mrs. Doolittle and I were talking about that a little earlier today, how someday your doctor might be AI. You go on and it's tell me your symptoms, take your little portable scanner, scan that area, it looks at the area and it says, yeah, you need to get in somewhere, you need to have this treated. Discovering new drugs. Did you see the news several months ago that one of the really hard, you've heard that we're running out of antibiotics, that the bacteria continues to evolve. We have several harmful forms of like staph infection that we have no good antibiotics for. At least as humans, we've not been able to find them. An AI tool in the healthcare industry found an antibiotic. It combined the right things together to produce an antibiotic to treat a bacteria nobody really knew how to treat. It's one of the really good things that can happen here. Environment. We can learn how to optimize energy consumption as AI analyzes our systems, the equipment that we have. We're looking at, all the forests that are being cut down to give us quarter pounders. They can monitor that so that we can do that in an intelligent way and make sure that we're doing it in a way that sustains our environment. Pollution levels, follow wildlife, especially if there are like climate adjustments, like the fact that Missouri only seems to get one good snow now. Like how does that adjust the migration of animals and how does that impact our environmental context? AI can do a lot of that. It might even be able to predict weather a lot better than the local weather people because it just can take in so much data and process it at once. So there's a lot of good things that can come from this. If you're not a great writer, like here's just a simple thing. I tell my teachers all the time, if you're writing something to a parent, and let's say you're just frustrated. You're frustrated because of the situation, the kiddo's not really coming through in class, maybe has an attitude, and you want the tone of your email to look okay. Write your email however you write your email. Put it into ChatGPT and say, rewrite this for me in a diplomatic tone. And it can rewrite it for you. So if you're trying to write that letter or you're trying to complain to a company and you want to write a letter to a company because you're not happy with the product you got, say, I want you to write a draft of a letter for me that does A, B, and C, and I want it to have a diplomatic tone, but I want it to be effective in helping this company understand my frustration. It'll spit it out, and then you change it however you want. It's a writing partner. Okay, let's see what we got next. So I talked about it may be less relevant for us to be able to code. It may be less relevant for us to be able to do a lot of the things that maybe we brought into our profession, young people are looking to do when they're going through their college years. But that's where we start to emphasize our humanity. So back when ATMs came out, there were people saying, oh, this is the end of the bank. Why do we need banks? We're going to save so much money on tellers. What ended up happening is it turns out people like to deal with humans. I am that way. Like I will go through the drive-through area when it's convenient for me, but I like to come in because I don't know how to fill out a deposit slip apparently and go into the person and interact with it. That's important for me, to see another person. That is still important for us. But we have young people who really are struggling, I think, sometimes, partially because they do everything by their phone to develop the social skills that they need for that sort of thing. We need to emphasize it even more. Do you notice that under, like, say, the age of 28, 29, they don't even use voicemail anymore? Like, my page is not even set up for voicemail. They're just changing. They would rather text you. I have yet to see my son Bryce on the phone talking to somebody. They just text. Well, that's a skill, to be able to have a conversation with somebody, a future employer, a future spouse, just a future good buddy. So we have to find ways, and this happens first in the home. Teachers can help, but teachers can't replace what has to happen in the home through experiences, taking our young people out to volunteer, giving them those types of experiences that get them past the superficial experiences they have on screens or whatever it might be. So now we're going to get into some Catholic stuff. I'm going to show you some ways you can use this tool, perhaps in your own walk with Christ. I'm going to try to give you some ways that are genuine, that don't take the humanity out. So I'm going to give you some ways that interact with maybe a small faith study, Catholic Christian ways to bring this technology in to do some things that you feel might be important. So I did tell DALL-E to create a picture of a Catholic robot family. So let's see how Catholic Christian we can make AI. And look at that. That's beautiful, isn't it? Let's make it more Catholic. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Let's make it more Catholic. At the bingo hall. Let's make it more Catholic. Yeah. Actually, it didn't. I played around with it a little bit, but and here's actually that brings a good point. These things are pre-trained off the internet. Think of what a cesspool the internet is. So one of the biggest challenges is this trust we have in what it pushes out. One of the biggest battles has been the inherent bias in the information that it has incorporated. So when ChatGPT and others first came out, it was saying some really harmful, some really dangerous things. And the programmers keep trying to put up guardrails, and then there are people who try to do what's called jailbreaking it and say, let's try to get it to say those things again. And it tried to keep tricking ChatGPT and those other things into saying things that were harmful, that it found on some forum somewhere, or that it found on some extremist website somewhere. And I think it's getting pretty good, but we got to understand there's an inherent bias at work. And so very early on especially, it was perpetuating like cultural stereotypes. So it wouldn't have actually have gone down that road. Like this was me poking fun at my own faith, but it would have come back and said, well, I can't do that because I will not perpetuate stereotypes. But that's just part of this. Before we get from here to maybe a really good system, like with any new technology, there's a lot of bumps in the road. So first off, this might be, I see a couple of you taking pictures. This is my guide on how to write a good prompt. And so what I mean by a prompt is if you get into ChatGPT, there will be a little space at the bottom. You tell it what you want. And what I tell people is that the prompt is conversational. So first off, if you don't know how to write a good prompt, just have a discussion with it. In fact, say to it, I don't know how to tell you what I want. Can you guide me through that? And it will just do that. Or you can have a discussion. You can say, hey, do this, this, and this. And then it spits something out, and you're like, it's not quite what I wanted. Can you tweak it so it has this? Or take this part out, and it'll do that. Make it a conversation. Second is assign it a role. So it does a better job if you give it a role. If you say something like, you want to understand, maybe you don't quite understand the Catholic teaching on transubstantiation. So you want it to explain it to you in simple terms. Tell it, you are a world-class theologian, but you're presenting to a group of seventh graders. Explain the concept of transubstantiation the way you know it because you're a theologian, but explain it in a way that seventh graders could understand. So you're giving it a role. Tell it to do something as if it were that historian, as if it were an astronaut, as if it were Abraham Lincoln. You are Abraham Lincoln. Talk to me about the Gettysburg Address and what was going through your mind as you prepared to go out and deliver it. Set up the parameters. Tell it the tone you want. I want you to write this in a friendly tone. I want you to write it in an angry tone, a romantic tone. I want it to be about 2 paragraphs long, 8 bullet points long, whatever it might be. I want it to be in poem format, poem form. I want it to be in an essay form. I want it to be in bullet points. I want you to write it as a letter. You just got to tell it these things. You got to be specific. You can invite questions. So sometimes I'll say, here's what I want you to do. Before you do it, ask me any questions you need to have answered before you move forward. So I give that advice to my teachers. I have some teachers who are really wanting to do some deep thinking types of lessons, but that's new for them. Okay, we'll have ChatGPT design it for you. Tell them you want a 3-day lesson on the causes of World War I. You want the kids to do group work. You want them to dig around and find their own research, like you're not going to give them some notes. But then pause and say, now, tell me what you think I'm asking you to do and ask me any questions you need to do it well. And it'll just start asking the questions. Or I need you to write a cover letter. I'm submitting a resume. I need you to write a cover letter. What questions do you need to know to write this cover letter? And it'll just ask you. You answer and it'll spit it out. The last thing is there has been some interesting research that says at the very end of whatever you put, if it is really important to you, if you tell it how important it is to you, like this is really important for my job, it will give you a better quality response. Also, there seems to be some research that I was trying to break myself of saying please and thank you to a set of algorithms. Might be a little research that says that at the very least, it prompts it to have a polite tone back to you when you say please and thank you, but it might also give you a better response. Like maybe the programmers put it in there. Scaffolding, if you're doing something very complex, have it do it in stages. I've done that before. It's like, give me an outline for a talk on AI. Okay, great. For each of those bullet points now, I want you to give me 3 details that I should include. Okay? And then finally, this is one I rarely do, but there are some people who are big fans of after it produces something for you. It sounds so ironic that it would work this way. Ask it to rate its own response on a scale of 1 to 10. And if it gives you anything less than a 9, say, well, why is that? Great, now revise it so that those things are no longer true. I want a 10, I want a 9. So interesting how you can interact with it. So here's some prompts that I came up with and tested before this talk, and we're about ready to wrap up if you have any questions. Oh, actually, I want to show you this. So we've been talking a lot about stewardship. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I literally put into a new image generator that's out there. I can't remember. It's Storyblocks. I said, create a video. No. It's InVideo is the program I use. InVideo. Create a video on stewardship for a Catholic parish, helping them understand what stewardship is and how to apply it in their lives. We won't watch the whole 2.5-minute video, but...
Have you ever pondered the profound impact of stewardship in the fabric of Catholic life? What if we told you that stewardship is not just about giving, but also about receiving? Welcome to our exploration of the rich tapestry of Catholic stewardship. Meet Maria, a longtime parishioner at St. Augustine's. She shares, "Stewardship has given me more than I ever expected. It's not just about financial contributions, it's about giving of yourself. When I started volunteering at our parish's food pantry, I found a sense of purpose."
You can have that use your own voice. You can upload your own voice. You talking for a few minutes, it will use your voice, your inflections, and it will narrate that entire thing. It put all the video together, it wrote the script, and it was an AI voice. And that took me all of probably 45 seconds to create that. I typed it in, and I hit go, and that's what it spit out. And if you don't like it, you say, no, edit it this way, and it'll change it. It's not the highest quality, but put that together with what you saw in Sora, you can see where we're going. You can also see, and this is if you've seen the, with this technology, have you seen the ways that people are getting scammed now by the phone calls from their granddaughter saying, I've been kidnapped? Yeah, so they're using AI voice changers to take the voice of, say, a young person. Grandma gets a call. Grandma, this is your daughter. This is your daughter, Veronica. This guy has me. He won't let me go. He needs you to send money right now. Like he needs it right now, Grandma, and it'll sound exactly like that person's voice. And people are getting scammed, and they're giving their credit card number. They're wiring money, whatever it is. And they find out later their granddaughter is just fine. She's at home hanging out at her house with her parents. But someone got a hold of her voice and mimicked it. So the scammers will continue to find ways to scam us that escape even our imaginations. And another thing for our kids, to teach them always, with everything, especially in this age, always be skeptical. But you're working with your kiddos, you want to talk to them about St. Joseph. I told it, create a coloring page for me of St. Joseph holding the hand of Jesus as a boy. If I had a little, say, kindergartner, I might be like, I want them to, what are we going to do Sunday afternoon? We don't have a Catholic coloring book. Let's do this. Let's create some pictures. So there's a nice way to use it. Catechesis. All of the pictures I have used in this, except for the Terminator, were generated by AI, by the way. You're a theology teacher at Catholic Middle School. Explain transubstantiation to sixth graders. So you'll notice the role I gave it, who are confused about something that looks and tastes like bread and wine and actually is the body and blood of Christ. So it spit out an explanation. It used some metaphors to explain it. Spiritual assistance, prompt 1. Below, I am pasting my nightly journals from the last 3 weeks. Summarize the themes that have emerged in what I've written. Prompt number 2. Suggest some Bible verses for me to read and reflect on that connect with the themes you identified. Debate prompt. We actually did this one in Coach Hinch's apologetics class or evangelization class. Write a short prayer. No, I'm sorry, we didn't do this one. I did this one tonight. Write a short prayer to start off and talk to Catholics about the threats and challenges of AI and how with God guiding us, we can respond in a way that's pleasing to Him. So my opening prayer was written by AI. Here's the debate prompt. So yeah, they both said debate prompt. I forgot to change my heading. This is very similar to this was such a great assignment. You remember once upon a time I did a lot of talks about apologetics and wrote a book about apologetics. I would want my own kids to be able to explain and defend their faith in the same way. And we want our students leaving Helias to be able to defend the teachings of their faith. They meet an atheist, defend the fact that Christ is really God. So you're a preacher from an evangelical faith tradition. We're on a debate stage together. Below is my argument from a Catholic perspective for why infants should be baptized. Write a 2-paragraph response pointing out flaws in my argument, proposing an argument that one should only be baptized at the age of reason. Include at least one Bible verse with citation in your response. We'll continue this dialogue until I ask you to conclude your argument. And then I put this line in when the high school kids did it. If at any point my arguments are not in a civil tone, point this out to me. Because we wanted them to learn how to, and so it would spit out an argument for them. They were trying to defend scripture and sacred tradition as sources of authority. And then the other half of the class was arguing against the teaching of sola fide, that our faith is an active, living thing, not just a one-time moment. And so they were then, ChatGPT would send them an argument. They would have to dig into their scripture, write a response to it, and they would have to type that. They did that collaboratively. Some of the kids said they beat it, and they came over. They were real excited. Like it ceded to my argument. It said that was a good argument. So they were real excited. But think of what was going on in that class. Deep learning, writing, reading, digesting, discussing at a high level. Coach Hinches was just walking around, sitting next to kids, and he's so into apologetics. He's like, oh, no, right back to it and tell it this Bible verse and this and this. So it was such powerful learning going on, and it was so fun to watch. So, but this part was key here. We didn't want them to turn. Sometimes when we turn our faith into an argument, it becomes something other than evangelization. If you want to try that, you don't want to do the prompt. Despite the name of the site, Debate Devil is really fun. It can debate anything with you. Sometimes it'll just ask you, like Socratically, questions about something. Sometimes it goes into warm and fuzzy mode where it just talks to you about it. But you want your young person to learn how to talk about civil matters, political matters. This is a place where they can go and debate, say, the merits of universal health care. And they pick one side or the other. So it's a good way to get their minds engaged. Bible study. Here's a Bible study. If I got some friends who want to get together and we can't find a good Bible study, design it yourself. Outline a 6-session Catholic Bible study focusing on strong and virtuous women from biblical stories. For each session, include the passages from the Bible that participants should read beforehand. Now, after it does that, each week you would want to go through and do prompt number 2. For session 1, outline the structure of the Bible study, including an opening prayer, a paragraph-long reflection passage, discussion questions, and a closing prayer. We were under a crunch at Helias to get the NCAA a curriculum for a class we had developed for this spring. It needed to approve it and say it would count when kids go on and want to play college sports. We didn't have time. I got my teachers a half day off. We had AI outline the entire course, week by week, the stuff the kids would read, the assessments, copies of the test. The teachers then were able to go in and tailor it and customize it and revise it. They got done in 2 hours, what probably would have been 3 days of them working together. It sped up something that here's something I say to educators I should have kept in this talk. When I talk to young people, I tell them there are things they should be using AI for and things they shouldn't. I said, here's how you tell the difference. Say you're an athlete. You're an athlete and your coach tells them, hey, you're getting pretty strong. I want you to bench press 220 pounds. I want you to lift 220 pounds over and over again in this weight room. Coach walks away and he's busy over here. Would it be okay to use hook up some pulleys and stuff to make that 220 pounds feel like 50 pounds? And they're like, no. I said, why not? Because you're not going to get stronger. That's right. It's formational. You're going to get faster, stronger, better at what you do. Same coach invites you over to his house because he needs you to help him build a patio. And he has a bunch of blocks over here that need to be moved over there. And he needs to get it done before the rain comes in. Is it okay then, instead of lifting those blocks, to use wheelbarrows or a skid loader and bring them over? And they're like, yeah. Why is that? Well, he didn't hire us over here to train ourselves. He just needs the blocks over there. Yeah, and you're making tasks that take up your time, tasks that keep you from the important stuff in your life, like your family, yourself, your God. Tasks are where we use AI and tools like that. Formational stuff, or stuff that your boss, who for them is their teacher, tells you to do, formational stuff you're shortchanging yourself. So what you wouldn't want to have happen to your muscles in the weight room, the same thing's going to happen to your mind. And I tell them this, none of you, I tell them, are going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI, and someone who knows critical thinking skills, and someone who has communication skills. You're going to lose your job to that person. Just like on the football field, you lose the game to the person who's bigger, stronger, and faster, you're going to lose your job to the person who's bigger, stronger, and faster up here if you let it do everything for you. But it's totally okay for tasks. There are things that keep me at my desk at work when my job is to be in classrooms. My job is to be in the hallway, not answering emails, not analyzing data, but AI can allow that stuff to take less of my time so I can do what I'm supposed to do. Teachers need to be able to spend time with their family so that these jobs where they don't get paid enough don't burn them out, and we continue to have a teacher shortage. Use it for the task so that you save the best of you for the important things in your life, like all tools, right? All right, we're at the last ones here. Partner in scholarship. You're an expert in Catholic theology, visiting a class of 8th graders. I gave this example, explain transubstantiation in a simple way. Summarize, last slide here, summarize in bullet points Pope Francis's most recent encyclical. When finished, provide 5 of the most powerful quotes from the encyclical to support his overall themes. That doesn't mean you don't read it, but now when you read it, you have something to connect to. There's little anchor points in your mind that oh, I get what the Pope is saying, because like all of our popes, bright guy, they write in deeply theological language that's been translated from their native language. And so this is a good way, especially if you're busy, to digest what important people write. So I did that, and I loved the first quote because I think it's exactly the quote that we end this talk on. This was one of the quotes that AI sent me after it summarized that encyclical in bullet points. And this is the thesis of what we take from our talk on AI, that there are so many good uses, there are so many dangers, but first and foremost, nobody can experience the true beauty of life without relating to others, without having real faces to love. This is a part of the mystery of authentic human existence. Life exists where there is bonding, community, fraternity, and life is stronger than death when it is built on true relationships and bonds of fidelity. So years ago, Karl Marx predicted, and I think we're heading in this direction to some extent, he predicted there would be a point where we would have a workless future, where the machines would do all the stuff. What's that? Nobody would work. And I don't think we're headed right to that point, but I think we're headed to a point where we start to have to ask, do people have to work so many days a week, so many hours, especially as AI will do more things for us. I'm going to digress, I'm going to come back to that. We get worked up about the self-checkout lanes at Walmart. It's going to take jobs from people. We've been automating for decades. We no longer have people push our buttons on an elevator for us. We don't have the hello girls, the switchboard operators routing our phones. We don't have bakers kneading and slicing and baking our bread as done on an assembly line. We pump our own gas now. We've been automating for centuries, and it's really not caused mass layoffs, right? We were struggling to find employees just recently. Remember, you saw all the businesses couldn't get people to work? I don't know if this is something different, but part of me thinks that it might be. Part of me thinks there's new jobs being created. There's already 6-figure jobs being advertised for prompt engineers. People who can do what I just did really well, 6-figure jobs because companies know this is the future. But maybe this moves too fast for new jobs to be created. Maybe it's just so efficient to have basically an influx of competent people taking these jobs that we just work less. Maybe there's some point we work not at all. I don't think any of us or our kids will live to see that, but we work less. Here's the problem. It starts to attack our sense of who we are as people. This is a scary thing. Robots, we used to know they were threatening the blue-collar jobs, taking the factory jobs, and that was bad enough, right? Now they're attacking the white-collar, the creative jobs, those jobs that bring fulfillment. The person who wants to write the novel, the person who wants to make the movie, person who wants to do the graphic design. That's what they're going after. The person who wants to be an actuary and the computer can do it faster and cheaper. Right? They're attacking that. We have to have an anchor to something. And our kids, and they don't know how to do this, I think, a lot of them, have to have an anchor to something other than just, here's what I'm going to do to make money. Right? So, relationships. So Karl Marx said we're going to get to that future where it's going to be a workless society, and he says it's going to be a utopia. We'll have all this time to golf and hang out. Joseph Pieper, German Catholic philosopher, he felt something different. He felt it will be devastating for humanity to go to a post-work culture. He said, unless we have something to anchor to that is greater than defining ourselves by an occupation. We know the answer for that. It's Jesus Christ. We know we encounter Jesus Christ through our fellow brothers and sisters. That's the message that I think to survive the changes, whatever they look like. I don't think any of us can predict it. That's what our young people need more than ever right now. I think that's where our churches and the message we have will become more relevant than ever before, because it's more that we don't have to worry about the Terminator wiping us out. We have to worry about ourselves having a crisis, an existential crisis of who am I if this can do all of the stuff. The one thing it can't do is give us a relationship with Christ, give us a relationship with each other. We went a little bit late, but thank you. If you have any questions, we can do that. So that's the end of the talk. Yes?
So have you been following the last week there on X, they've been talking about Google's AI, used to be Bard, now it's Gemini?
I think so, yeah.
And how Google is injecting additional prompts into the code that you write.
Okay.
So they gave an example, showed me a picture of a pope, and one of the pictures was a woman, and another was a black guy.
I think, so you're talking about, and that may have been the case. One of them was they should show 4 early American senators, and they showed individuals that were not senators, but they were putting prompts in to drive maybe a political correctness or something like that. Yeah.
And it was, they tried to get it to show pictures of white guys, and it wouldn't do that.
Right.
Or a white family, and it wouldn't do that, but it would show pictures of black families and Asian
Right.
families.
So I think that's the same distrust we have to help our kids realize that they should have been having with social media all along, is that those who control the platform and those who have the money, whatever their agenda is, they will find ways to seep that in. That's another reason they have to learn the critical, skepticism is a good thing. The healthy skepticism, right? And that's a skill that I think a lot of times they don't have, is that healthy skepticism of what's put in front of them. You know, the old joke, it's online, it must be true. I think sometimes for young people that resonates, right? So, yeah. What else? Yeah.
Why don't you give a class on propaganda or skepticism?
Right.
I mean, those are skills that.
Yeah. But you're talking about having a class where, yeah, and so that's part of what we're incorporating. The teachers have, in talking about AI, one of the things I've told them to do is that we can't let it do the thinking for us. So kids need to learn propaganda, logical fallacies, that natural. So for instance, a lesson I saw the other day, one of the teachers had the kids use Perplexity, which is a chat GPT hooked to the internet, to say, you're doing a research article on whatever it was. Find 5 good sources, and it spit out those sources. Some people would just latch onto those sources. You probably saw the article about the lawyer who had AI write its entire brief for him, took it in, and it turned out a bunch of the sources were fake or not valid. And that happened live time in a hearing. So the next assignment then the teacher said, so of these sources that is spit out for you, now your job is, here's how we evaluate sources to see their validity, to see their worth. That's your real assignment today. Perplexity I use it for my dissertation that I'm working on. Help me find some sources. My job to determine if they're valid sources, right? So yeah, but schools who are not recognizing what's here with AI probably are not incorporating that the way they need to, and that's part of the reason I'm talking to so many schools. With our seniors, we have just a few more months to teach them about something that will be a huge part of their next several years. And so even if they don't know how to use it, the social media influences are teaching them how to use it. We got to teach them how to use it with integrity. What else? It? Yeah.
I just got my utility bill from Ameren, and a really good example of how AI can intrude in your life, but in a good way. It showed me how much of my electric bill was from my furnace, from appliances, from the hot water heater, so forth. Things that if I had to do an energy audit and pay somebody, I'd pay them $500 to come in and do it. Ameren just spit that out on my bill.
Yeah, absolutely. I use it that way at school. First off, I never put in student names or personal identifiable information into AI or teacher names because it belongs to a third-party company. But I will sometimes put in collections of data, survey data, all of that, 3s and 4s and 5s on a ranked choice survey, and say, give me the themes, point to me what I need to be aware of from what these students said on this recent survey. It can break stuff down for you like that and help you to make smart decisions. There's a good use. Gary?
I don't want to sound negative on this situation, but I want to ask, how can a teacher, let's say in life, determine now the difference between a student that's a D student and a student that's an A student? If everybody's going through AI, their papers should be pretty equivalent together and pretty smart.
They could be.
Do
But
we eliminate the grading system, and do we consider, I have one other point, do you consider that a misrepresentation of fact that that person uses a system for their brain thought, not their actual brain thought?
right, yeah, we do, and that's part of what, and that's why I used the explanation earlier that teachers, like good coaches, don't assign something and say go home and do this, because before AI, some of them were having their parents help them do it, or you could buy an essay on the internet. So here's I'm glad you said this. Interesting fact: Stanford has been doing a 15-year study on academic integrity. Here's what they found out, Gary. They found out that, good news, AI has not resulted in kids cheating more than they did before. Bad news, for the last 15 years, 70% of kids said they were cheating. They just found a more efficient way of doing it. And for years, what principals have been saying, and what is our message, and I'm in classrooms a lot, and I know teachers are doing this because I'm in classrooms a ton, you can't keep farming off. I'm not an anti-homework person. Homework has a purpose when it is necessary, when it can't be done in class. But if you're just saying, write this paper and it's due Thursday because you're spending your class doing read-alouds, they're going to have someone else help them with that paper because they are chasing an A. If we're writing it in real time, and as you're writing your paper, I'm walking around and I'm watching, I'm sitting next to you, it's like, okay, I like this. This is your second draft. I noticed I told you to do new transitions, and I see that. I'm seeing that paper several steps in a way. What you just said is a lot harder. Now, in my talk to teachers, by the way, I do teach them tricks to, if they have to give homework, ways to catch that. Pretty soon, some of the big names are going to start encoding stuff in things it produces so that you'll be able to detect if it's written by AI or not. And I've taught teachers some kind of hack ways to do that. The AI checkers are so unreliable, and the AI checkers often have inherent biases, especially against English as second language learners, that I don't recommend schools buy the AI checkers. But there are ways that you can help to keep kids going the path of integrity. And so we just caught a kid recently who was the second time he had been caught using AI, and he's like, I should have known after I got in trouble the first time. Yeah, you should have known. So there are ways, but the best way is to teach like a good coach. It happens in real time, so I can guide you in real time instead of having you do it at home, which is the worst possible time to try a new skill, right? So what else? Okay, Kimmy? Yeah, I think there is, and that's an individual decision we'll have to make because we just can't police it. Like, that's something we have to, and that's part of why we talk to the kids. I have found it free up a lot of my professional time with stuff that was not essential for why I was hired, right? Same reason, same way I use my administrative assistant. I need you to do this because I got to be in a classroom. Will some people become dependent? Yes, for the same reason we see people addicted to their phones. We see all of that happening. We're also dependent on our cars and our TVs and couches, which is why so many of us are fighting our waistlines, you know? And so yes, people will become too dependent and we will get lazier up here. That's the downside, and I don't know a fix for that, but it is true. If it's something we don't want to be true about ourselves and our kids, we have to make the conscious effort. I can't control what this family does or that family. Okay, what else? Okay, yeah, let's make this last question then. Rose?
I'm just curious, when you say that AI pulls from the internet, do they pull from your phone too?
Depends on what you put on your phone. Yeah, like if your phone is, so
I would not want my voice.
here's where you have to be worried. If you're using a third-party app, you don't know what that third-party app is doing with your information. It's probably in the small print that you checked, but if you're just making a phone call, you're just calling Gary, probably unlikely. I mean, when I watched the Edward Snowden movie, I was like, probably unlikely. but if you're using a third-party app, they're going to do whatever they want to do with that, as long as it's in the fine print. Hopefully, if it was in the fine print. Yeah. One of my passwords, back when I was using the same password for several sites, it got hacked and found off of Words with Friends. So that's it. Yeah, but now that wasn't Words with Friends that gave it up, but a hacker got into their database and stole a bunch of them. But they do use it because they monetize. When you're using free apps, they make their money somehow. They're learning from you. So, and somehow they got that granddaughter's voice, right? You know, somehow they got her voice. Okay, thank you all.